Hey guys, it's Gregory 88 again. It's been a while, but in today's video, I'll be covering the golden age of the Ryukyu kingdom, the great days of Chuzan. At the end of the last video, we saw the rise of King Sho En and the fall of the first Sho dynasty. During Sho En's short rule, he purged the royal government of the previous dynasty. Then he declared his sister, Geisei, to be the normal priestess of Uezato Island, where she virtually ruled their former home. And overall, he began the kingdom's shift towards a bureaucratic monarchy. After Sho En died in 1477, his younger brother, Sho En, took the throne. However, their sister Geisei supposedly had a vision that he should abdicate the throne in favor of Sho En's son, which he would ultimately do as a believer in the Otaki religion. However, there is a strong possibility that Sho En's wife, Queen Ukiaka, was responsible for this. Ukiaka, or known in Japanese as Ogiaka, held the title of Yoshiudun Ufu Anjiganashi, which was mistranslated into English as Yosoidon in Western historiographies and was also mistaken as her name. Ukiaka held great influence over her son's early rule, up until her death around 1505, to the point that once Europeans began visiting Ryukyu in the 1700s, they heard stories of the Queen Mother. Once Sho En abdicated, he retired to Goeiku Magiri in modern Okinawa City, where he mysteriously died after only a few months. There is a theory that he was actually poisoned by Ukiaka. With or without his mother's influence, King Sho En is arguably the greatest ruler in Ryukyuan history, so great in fact that historians call his rule the Great Days of Chuzan. When Sho En ascended the throne in 1477, the island was still under feudal rule by the lords, called Anji or Aji, who lived in castles called Gasuku spread across the Ryukyu Islands. Despite the unification of Okinawa under Shohashi and the expansion into the Amami Islands, the previous 200 years saw many wars and rebellions, and Sho En had an idea to solve this once and for all. First, he banned the peasants from owning weapons and collected them in an armory in Tomigasuku. Then, he forced the Aji to relocate from their Gasuku across the kingdom to the king's capital at Shuri, leaving a representative to rule their domain. This limited the power of the elites and crippled the capabilities of any popular revolt. This would be done more than 100 years later in Japan by Toyotomi Hideyoshi and Tokugawa Ieyasu. Sho En also reorganized the kingdom's territory, creating the Kunigami district in the north along the old borders of the kingdom of Hokuzan, Nakagami district in the center, along the borders of Chuzan, and Shimajiri district in the south, along the borders of Nanzan. Each of the districts were divided into magiri, equivalent to modern Japanese prefectures. Now with the peasants disarmed and the Aji away from their retainers, Sho En reorganized his military. Naturally, the king himself was at the top of the command structure, but immediately below him was his Council of Three, or Sanshikan. Each of these counselors was the commander of a unit called a ban, and each ban was made of 4 units called hiki. Each hiki was made of 100 men, and comes from the word meaning to pull together, since each hiki pulled together the things it needed to act independently of other units, such as cooks and armorers. The 3 ban were stationed in and around Naha with the task of defending the capital. Additionally, each ship in Ryukyu's trade fleet held 1 hiki on board to fight off pirates. And finally, the semi-independent forces of the Aji, called Ajigun, were brought into the chain of command of the Ryukyuan military and renamed Magiri-gun, thus ensuring that the king held all military authority in the kingdom and reduced the risk of peasants or feudal lords rising up against him. Sho En also gave attention to religion, where the previously decentralized Otaki religion became an organized, state-sanctioned institution. Much like the Ryukyuan military, the Otaki priestesshood was a hierarchy, with the Chifi Ufujin, or in Japanese Kikoi Oogimi, or high priestess, at the top. The Chifi Ufujin was always a member of the Sho dynasty. Directly below her were the priestess rulers of Uezato Island and Kudaka Island, as well as the Mihara Oamo Shirare, or district priestesses, who oversaw the districts of Kunigami, Nakagami, and Shimajiri. Within each district, there was then a priestess for each magiri, and under them, a priestess for each village. And finally, at the bottom, were family priestesses or assistants. The assistants could be men for some public ceremonies as well. Each priestess from the village level up was appointed by the king. Sho En also built the gate to Sunafanutaki in Shuri, and designated it under the care of the Chifu Ufujin. On that note, Sho En also made effort to construct monuments and public works. He installed the Thailand-inspired dragon pillars at Shuri Castle, and built the royal mausoleum at Tamaudon. He also built the Izena Tamaudon for his parents. While we already covered his contributions to the Utaki religion, Sho En was also a patron of Buddhism. He acquired Buddhist texts from Korea, and built many temples, including Enkakuji, Benzaitenji in the Ryukyuan Pond, and Sogenji. At Sogenji in Naha, it is noted that there still remains the stele that directs passers-by to dismount their horses. To better connect the royal capital at Shuri to the main port at Naha, Sho En constructed the Pearl Road, which can still be found today. Naha was a bustling center of international trade, with its harbor being busy with trade and commerce. From here, Ryukyuan ships and sailors connected Asia in a vast trade network from Japan to Indonesia. Some of the trade goods involved included Japanese swords, jade jewelry, porcelain dishware, and silk from China, as well as Chinese, Japanese, and Ryukyuan coins. Native Ryukyuan products included roof tiles, horses, especially from Miyako and Yonaguni, sulfur, sugarcane, which was used raw or ground into brown sugar, Ryukyuan lacquerware and pottery, and Ryukyuan textiles like bingata. While Ryukyu was prosperous from maritime trade, not everything was going smoothly. To the southwest of Okinawa are the Sakishima Islands, which until this time merely paid tribute to Ryukyu, but were not part of the kingdom. Around 1500, one man, Oyake Akahachi, decided to rebel against Ryukyu in what is known as Akahachi's Rebellion. Hailing from Taketomi Island, he convinced the leaders of Ishigaki and Iriomote to join him. Across the straits in nearby Miyako, the island was similarly divided amongst the Aji. However, Nakasone Toyomiya heard of Akahachi's rebellion and used it as a tool to unify Miyako under his rule. Nakasone claimed to hear a rumor that Akahachi planned to invade Miyako, and so he led a preemptive counter-invasion of the Yaeyama Islands. The Miyakoans landed on Ishigaki and attacked Furusutobaro Castle, where they defeated the Yaeyamans and killed Akahachi. Nakasone didn't stop here though, and the Miyakoans then invaded neutral Yonaguni Island next to Taiwan. Nakasone killed Yonaguni's chief and took the chief's daughter. The Sakishima Islands were unified under Miyako, but this would not last long. Sho En, hearing of the rebellion, dispatched a fleet of 100 ships to invade the islands. Once they arrived at Miyako though, Nakasone chose to surrender rather than fight Ryukyu. For this, he was made the governor of Miyako under Ryukyuan direct rule. In 1505, Ryukyu annexed Kume Island, finally bringing the entire Ryukyu archipelago under the control of the kingdom. A stele was erected naming the achievements of King Sho En, marking the height of Ryukyuan power and prestige. Sho En would die in 1527 after ruling for 50 years. Before we continue, there are two stories that happened during Sho En's time that I want to tell. The first is the tragedy of Kubaka Castle on Miyako Island. A Ryukyuan merchant named Tamagasuku fell in love with Kubaka Aji's daughter, Kojin, and they had a son together. One day, the merchant overheard her telling their son that he was the son of a wanderer. This infuriated the merchant, who proclaimed his importance as a traitor and then took the boy with him back to Okinawa, where the boy would grow up to become an Aji himself, but never to return. Kojin would walk along the shore in despair, wishing to die, until a tsunami washed her away. Supposedly, her cries can be heard on the beach near the castle to this day. The second story is the tale of Aka-inko. Aka-inko means child of the red dog. In the late 15th century, there was a drought affecting Okinawa. and was especially hard in Yomitan-zanmagiri. A young girl named Chira owned a red dog, and one day the dog was found licking water off its face as if it had just had a drink. The villagers followed the dog into a cave and discovered a new source of fresh water, saving the village from the drought. Chira was then courted by 2 men, and she became pregnant by the one she chose. However, the other man was jealous and killed her lover, and then spread a rumor that she had gotten pregnant from her dog. She ran away in disgrace to Ike Island, where she gave birth to her son. Chira took her own life shortly after giving birth, but her parents took the boy back to Yomitan to raise him. The child of the red dog, Akainko, one day heard a melody in the rain that he liked and wanted to recreate. He took 3 horsehairs and attached them to a tree branch, inventing what would become the Okinawan sanshin. The sanshin became popular to the point that it received the patronage of King Sho En himself, and Akainko was sent around the kingdom and even to China to play the instrument. Akainko's shrine is located in Yomitan today. It was truly a golden age for Ryukyuan culture. Following Sho En's reign, there were a number of pirate attacks on Naha and rebellions in the Amami Islands. King Sho would build what I call the Greater Naha Shuri Defense Network in 1546, connecting a series of fortifications and armories for rapid responses to threats, including the famous Mie and Yaratsumori forts that guarded the entrance to Naha's harbor. With the death of Sho in 1555, Shogen ascended the throne. However, Shogen was a mute and had difficulty communicating, which resulted in the Seikan assuming greater responsibility in governing the kingdom. To the north of Ryukyu in Japan, the Shimazu clan of Satsuma domain in Kyushu claimed the title of Lords of the Southern Islands, directly challenging the sovereignty of Ryukyu and disputing control over its territory. In 1493, Ryukyu had defeated a Satsuma invasion of Amami Island, and then in 1470, Shimazu Yoshihisa sent envoys attempting to coax Ryukyu into becoming a tributary or vassal of Satsuma. However, Ryukyu rejected this. The following year, Satsuma responded by attacking Amami Island, but they were defeated once again. Satsuma would turn their attention to conquering Kyushu, until they were defeated and subjugated by Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and seeing Shimazu Yoshihiro assume head of the clan. While the Ryukyuans were building the Shiraemon Gate at Shuri Castle, Hideyoshi was building an army to conquer Asia, starting with Korea. King Sho En would keep Ryukyu out of the conflict, but this would set the stage for our next video. Well, that's it for today. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and as always, see you next time.